Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien. Just a few weeks ago, I read The Hobbit, and I loved it. I thought it was a really entertaining adventure story filled with creativity and imagination. That was my main takeaway. It was a story bursting with fantastic ideas and a wholly created world where these characters could inhabit. And it was fun. I wanted to um, carry on. I was not just taken away with the adventure story in The Hobbit, I just liked the hobbits. Spending time in the Shire and with these funny little people. And I know enough from seeing the movies that the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring also starts in the Shire. And I just wanted to spend a little bit more time with the hobbits. I wasn't sure if I would um, read the book or all three of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And after finishing the Fellowship of the Ring, I know very quickly I'll be reading the other two. It was amazing. I was satisfied with the time that we have with the hobbits. A very good portion of the beginning of the book um, is in the Shire and kind of the doings and comings and goings of the hobbits and um, the family of uh, Bilbo Baggins and his neighbors and kind of disputes and arguments that these little hobbits are having about household affairs and residences, and um, I just love it. It's uh, a fun little town. These funny little people that like to just stay at home. They live in these little burrows. They have nice, cozy houses. They like to eat meals and smoke their pipe and drink and host parties and um, work in their gardens. I just love it. It was the beginning of the book is um, exactly what I would have hoped for. It was great. And we have Bilbo now. He's back from his adventure, and the story of the Hobbit is this adventure story where Bilbo Baggins and a gang of dwarfs, um, at the prompting of Gandalf, are going to go to this mountain that's being guarded by a dragon and get a fortune. They're going to get all this gold. And on the way in this adventure, Bilbo discovers or comes across a magical ring that turns him invisible. And the ring is used throughout The Hobbit to um, get out of uh, dangerous situations and things like that. Well, they have their adventure. They find the mountain full of gold. There's the dragon, and then they go home. Bilbo Baggins is back at the Shire with a magic ring, and the Fellowship of the Ring begins, and we find Bilbo is a notorious figure in the Shire, in Bag End. Uh, the hobbits are not adventurous people. They like to just stay at home and have their meals. And so there's all these stories about Bilbo and how he's amassed a huge treasure and he's become strange. He's having a birthday coming up and he's going to be 111 years old. And he's a Dorian Gray. He's the hobbits think that he's made some sort of pact with the devil because he still looks unnaturally young, and he keeps this ring in his possession at close proximity, and the ring has a kind of bond with Bilbo. And so uh, the magical powers of the ring has kept him much more youthful, unnaturally youthful. And Bilbo has a plan. He has a stepson or some relation with Frodo. He's kind of like a step-in son for Bilbo, and Bilbo is going to have a big birthday bash. Gandalf is going to be there, and in front of the whole party, he's going to put the ring on and disappear and never to be seen of again. All of this happens, and there's a big shock and surprise. The hobbits don't know what that they just watched Bilbo disappear, and Bilbo invisibly runs back to his little hobbit hole. He's planned an escape. He's going to take all of his things and go off and leave everything to Frodo, and that's going to be the end of his time at the Shire. And Gandalf gets wind of this and cuts him off at the pass and meets him in his hobbit hole, Bilbo, and convinces, very tensely convinces Bilbo to leave the ring. And one of the properties of this ring is that it consumes you, and you become addicted to the ring. You just are very possessive of it. And Gandalf has to show his stature and his powers, and he just frightens and terrifies Bilbo. He gets gigantic, and the lights fall and shadows come up behind Gandalf, and Bilbo relents and he leaves the ring. And Frodo now lives in this residence. He knows there's a ring there, but it's nothing that he thinks is especially important. And we spent a lot of time in the Shire, like 20 more years go by. It's not like Frodo gets the ring and then runs off on this adventure. And I loved that. I just loved all the time that we spend in the Shire. But Gandalf comes back. Turns out this ring is a much bigger deal than Gandalf or Bilbo or the readers even knew about. There was a great decision on Tolkien's part in order to continue this story and expand the world that he was creating. It's as if the story of the Hobbit, was written by Bilbo, but Bilbo was a little bit of an unreliable narrator. So in the Fellowship of the Ring, we're essentially told that this story wasn't exactly how it happened, which I just thought was a brilliant way of expanding the world of Middle Earth without undermining the initial story of the Hobbit. It becomes a world within a world, a story told within this larger story. And so this magical ring is actually one of many rings, but it's a powerful ring, and it's an evil ring. We see how it transformed Gollum, and it's actually this evil character named Sauron. It was really his ring, and he made it. He's evil. And so Gandalf discovers all of this, and so now the ring has to be taken to a volcano pit, and the only way to destroy the ring is to throw it in the volcano pit. And for some reason, Frodo, who's now in possession of the ring, he's the one that has to do it. So Gandalf convinces Frodo to go along, and Frodo has his friend Sam Gamgee, who always calls Frodo Mr. Frodo, and then Merry and Pippin. wonderful characters. All of these hobbits are so uh, lovingly drawn. They have personalities and they like one another. They're just like a band of friends. And as it goes along, we find that they're totally outmatched for the perils that are in store for them. Um, but they're stronger together. It's great. As far as Gandalf, um, I was so impressed by how powerful and how magical of a character he is. In the movies, um, I never found Gandalf's magical powers to be all that impressive. Whereas in the books, it's just steeped through his entire character that he's um, a magical being. Um, and the way that the other characters are impressed by him or a little bit afraid of Gandalf. And we have these moments where it really shows that the magical moments in the book are just so well done. And um, as soon as the hobbits go off on their adventure, they have to go through this treacherous, scary, evil forest. And the forest has an unfortunate past with the hobbits because the hobbits were like cutting down the trees. The trees didn't like it. Um, the forest would create these paths. So as soon as you got into the woods, um, the forest would constantly be redirecting you deeper into the woods. So every time you were trying to get out, you were actually going further into the forest. And this all comes to a head where a tree like eats one of the dwarves. It gets like swallowed up by the roots. And then um, a magical being pops out. His name's Tom something, and saves them. It's a very long um, episode that I don't remember at all. It was really interesting. Bundahill or something. Um, they get out of the forest. They meet. They have to go to the Prancing Pony. They find out that there's these black riders, these black figures riding horses, hot on their heels. They're like evil spirits that are part part of the spiritual world and then part of the physical world. And they get to the Prancing Pony. It's this inn that they had to get to. And it's kind of like a fish out of water story because we had these little hobbits now surrounded by full grown men and dwarfs and other creatures. The inn accommodates hobbits and has a little hobbit hole suite for them. And characters start piling up. There's a mysterious figure, Strider, but then we start meeting dwarfs and elves, different kinds of elves. There's wood elves and different elves, and Gandalf comes back into the scene, and all of a sudden we have this story where almost every scene you'll have a dozen characters. You have and scenery, like set piece, location to location, set piece to set piece. All of these characters that are different kinds of creatures interacting in a way that um, is so clearly drawn. It's incredibly difficult to have all of this stuff going on and not to be entirely confused. And instead, it's just this picture rolling through your mind. You can see hobbits have a smaller stature, and dwarfs are these kind of barrel-chested, um, broad-backed, big creatures, and the elves are kind of slight and very powerful and strong, but almost have like an airy, silvery, starlit quality to them. The style of the writing changes from when you're in the Hobbit to the scary woods to these ethereal passages when you were in the presence of the elves. And all of this stuff started piling up. They're just on this road trip story again. But unlike The Hobbit, which the centerpiece of enjoyment for me was the creativity and the imagination, what I was struck by was how this world, this magical Middle Earth world filled with all these characters becomes real. It it's full of fantastical images and characters and all of those things. It just turns into a historical novel. All of this has been bought. The credibility is set in, and you're just inhabiting a world that is just as far away as any other historical novel that you would read, if it would be something set in ancient Greece or Rome or 18th century France. It has the same authority over the world that we're spending time in that you find in the novels of Sir Walter Scott or Henri de Balzac. It's just so fully realized. It's incredible. I was really swept away with the story. I don't really quite understand the story as far as it goes. There's this big meeting where the elves and the dwarves and the men, the hobbits and Gandalf all decide they're going to form a fellowship. It's going to be a party of people that need to take the ring to an evil volcano pit. Why they're doing all of this, I'm not entirely sure. I don't really understand how the ring works, why it's invisible. The evil Sauron, I don't understand. The goblins, but it's great. The end of the story is really like, what is that term? Like a dog tale story. It just ends with there's been so much danger and peril. They're right at the bottom of this mountain or something, and they've been worn down. Gandalf is dead. They're like injured and sore and weary, and they know that there's even graver danger ahead when there's like an army of goblins. They're called orcs. Frodo's aware of all of this, and he wants to run away. He's going to abandon the Fellowship. He's going to leave the hobbits, leave Sam Genji, and go off on his own because he doesn't want to risk the lives of this group of people. And he makes his way. He's wearing his invisible ring, but Sam catches him. And Sam says, "There's no way you're doing this without me, Mr. Frodo." He always calls him Mr. Frodo. And the book ends with the two of them just walking into a grave situation. Whether, as a reader, I'm to think they're walking to their deaths, or if they're walking into glory. I wonder what the reader at the time that this was published would have thought. Um, I have the luxury of hindsight, knowing, seeing all the movies for one, and just knowing the whole story, um, but also knowing that there's a trilogy. I wonder if the reader of the day knew there was a trilogy, or what they would have thought just finishing book one. Um, it concludes. I'm not sure how satisfying the conclusion is, um, just being one third of a whole. Um, but it was great. There's so many characters, so much life. It's a story brimming with a whole world. It's amazing, amazing. I read it on my e-reader, so I don't have anything. Um, so uh, I'm going to be carrying on with the other two. I think it's the Two Towers and another one. So let me know what you think, if you're a fan of Tolkien, or if you have a preference between any of the books and anything like that. If you have any thoughts on anything that I had to say. Um, so thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you would like, and take care.